words from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I've been blessed by you. I've been encouraged by you. And I've had a blast. And I just pray that God is going to bless you beyond measure. And that this body of believers will just grow and thrive in every way. And the reality is, I will never be able to convey to you my gratitude, but I do say thank you. Tonight, we're going to share some things about the work in Cameroon. I've been involved in that work for 22 years. We're going to begin by just a few pictures that hopefully you will find interesting. If they're not, don't tell me after services because I get my feelings hurt very easily. We're going to look at some positives of this ministry. We're going to look at some negatives. And we're going to look at the future. Cameroon, and of course, because of Richard, you've probably seen a number of these, but most Americans have never even heard of Cameroon. And if they have, if you say, where is it? You get this blank stare. I tell people, because many Americans know of Nigeria. Now, Cameroon is bordered by about 6 different countries, but Nigeria is the one that we know. And here you see a picture of it. The small part on the left side, in orange or whatever color that is, that's the English side. The rest of it's French. Cameroon is a unique country in this sense. If you were to look at a map of Africa, almost every country was colonized by either the British or the French. There is a little German, there is a little Dutch, but not much. But Cameroon was colonized by both. But you will notice that the 170, that's the number of congregations on the English side, with 40 on the French. And you can see there's a great disparity. Because not only does the French side have the great land mass, or the greater land mass, it has the vast majority of the people. I'm going to give you 2 basic reasons why the church is so much greater in number on the English side than the French. Number 1, most of the missionary work has been done on the English side. In 1967, there was a war in eastern Nigeria. There were some American missionaries there, and they had to flee. And so they just hopped over into Cameroon. It was English speaking. They spoke English. So they set up shop. They started teaching, baptizing. Very little work was done on the French side. Another thing, if you know anything about the French, or the English for that matter, the French are not nearly as receptive to the gospel. And that's not true just in Cameroon. That's true in France, that's true in Belgium, that's true in any place where they speak French. And there are a number of reasons. I don't have time to go into them. But there are a number of reasons for that. Now, in our ministry, we're trying to reach everybody. In February, as you know, because Richard has met with me every other year since 1999. This coming February will be our 21st. Was 20 this last one? I think it's the 21st seminar coming up in February. In June, we have an English, a campaign on the English side, evangelistic. In October, on the French side. So that's just a very generic overview. Okay. This picture is 15 years old. I want you to notice a couple of things. Richard is really aged. And I would not say gracefully. But you notice Lori looks younger today than she did then. And another thing I've always noticed is whenever they're side by side, man, Lori looks like a teenager. But anyway, that picture was taken in 2003. Here's a typical baptistry. I love this picture. This is in the rainy season. We're talking serious mud. And that guy in the middle, he's looking, okay, where can we go? Where can the vehicle make it from this side to the other side? And let me tell you something. You ain't seen mud till you've been to Cameroon in the rainy season. I mean, we're talking serious stuff. Here's a gas station. Now this is in a village. Now, if you go in a major city, they have gas pumps just like you and I do. But in a village, what will happen is a petrol or a gas truck will go by, however often they go by, and dealers will buy, however much they buy. It's sold by the liter, and whether it's a machine, which that's their name for a motorcycle, or a taxi, a car, they'll go up and they'll say, I need 1 liter, 2 liters, whatever, and they'll sell it. I like this picture. The story behind this, almost next month, in October, I'm going to go to a place called Yokoduma. It's 22 hours from Douala to Yokoduma. One way. It will take longer to travel roughly 300 miles than it will the thousands and thousands and thousands of miles I'll travel to get from Dallas to Douala. Of course, when you're going 550 miles an hour, that helps out a lot. There are 2 major roads. Well, actually, there's 1 major road to Yokoduma. But sometimes big trucks in the rainy season have tore up the road so bad. Now, this is all dirt. Okay, no tar. Well, they call it tar road, no pavement. And so sometimes you'll have to ride this ferry, and it's really cool. 2 vehicles will get on this ferry, only 2. There's no motor on this ferry. Okay, they will shove it off. Some men will shove it off from the far side. The current will bring it over, and then there are ropes, and you can't really see it. Well, maybe you can. Anyway, and some men will pull the ferry in, and off you go. It's a beautiful river. I don't know the name of it, but it's a beautiful river. I love this picture. I love this picture. This is in Bonaberry, where Louis Basai used to preach, where he was a former preacher. Now, they're very tough over there about phones ringing and things like that. In every service, they'll get up and say, put off your cell phone. I mean, that's their terminology for turn it off. But in this one, now they misspelled past. It should be PST. But it's past 9 a.m. Those in Bible class begin. You're late, and Jesus has been waiting. Please repent. Tough church, right? I think it's a cool picture. Now, you're going to be interested in this. This is the church in Smolakombe. You've probably heard of Andrew Malicki before. I assume that Richard has talked to you about Andrew. And as you look at the picture, the far right, the guy with the white shirt and tie, that's Andrew. He's the preacher there. That picture is a great depiction of the size of the building. It's about as deep as is wide, so it's a very small building. Here it is last year. It's a new building, and you built it. Did you know that? Yeah. Linder Road built this. It's got concrete. The old building had dirt floor. It has concrete, and you can see it's packed. I mean, this is a great congregation. It is a really great congregation. Now, this picture is of the Biamasi Church of Christ, which is in Yaoundé. Yaoundé is the capital of the country. This is French. And this picture gives you a really good view of the size of the hall. That's what they call an auditorium or a church building. Because I'm at the very front when I snap this picture. And so you can see they're pretty tight. That's their building today. It's the finest building in Cameroon, the church building. You can see all the pews have backs on them. You go into most church buildings in Cameroon, you're on what we would call park benches. I mean picnic benches type. But you see, very nice. Notice there are two pulpits. This is a bilingual church. Every service is in French and English, both languages. Now, one thing that's interesting about the French side, when you go like to Yokoduma, where the picture of the ferry. When I go to Yokoduma in October, when I preach, I will have two translators. You see, the native tongue is Bulu. Cameroon is the size of California in area, roughly 17 million people, but it has more dialects than any African country. There are 273 dialects in Cameroon. And the dialects are not remotely related to French or English. So when I go to Yokoduma, here I am, and I've got a French translator here. It'll be Jean-Claude this time. And so I will speak in English. Jean-Claude will speak to the French speakers. And then a guy named Roger in English, Roger, he will then speak in Bulu. He understands French, and he will translate into Bulu. Bulu, in no way, shape, or form, is like French. Okay? And so, that's just the way it is sometimes. Now, let's talk about this ministry. One thing about mission work, and I want you to think about this. And if you disagree, no problem. But I believe that everyone in this room has a mission philosophy. Now, you may not know about it. You may never have really thought it through. That is, you may not have it written down on a piece of paper. But here's what I mean when I say you have a mission philosophy. You either believe, yes, we should support natives, or no, we should not. Or if we do support them, they should be on a descending scale, or we should support them until the Lord returns. We should build buildings, we should not build buildings. We should go this place in the world, we should go this place in the world. Okay? I believe that American Christians with good hearts, I want to be very clear, have done a lot of harm in foreign works with dollars. I'm not saying we should never support foreign works. But here's something different between an American and Cameroonian. Let's say Dave. Let's say Dave has a financial problem, and somehow I'm being made aware of it, but I don't know how much he needs. Shh. Okay. Now, let's say he needs $100, but I don't know that, and so I offer him $200. I would trust that Dave would say, "Hey Jim, I appreciate it, but I only need $100," and he'd give me the $100 back. Not if he's a Cameroonian. He will take the $200 and say, "Thank you very much." If I give him $1,000, he'll say, "Thank you very much." If I give him $100,000, he'll say, "Thank you very much." And the reality is, as I view mission work, our job is not to go to a foreign land and stay there forever. As far as Cameroon, it is helping Cameroonians win Christ for that nation. It's not Jim Corner's responsibility. It's not Linder Road's responsibility. Can you help? Can I help? Can Buckingham Road help? Sure we can, and we're happy to help. But the goal is for the day to come when they don't need Americans because they're on their own 2 feet. But let me tell you something about third world people, and I'm not trying to be mean. They will never fly out of the nest on their own. You'll have to kick them out of the nest. Now, kick them gently, and we are doing that. Let me give you one example. 8 years ago, we had 14 native preachers on support. Today we have 6. And at the end of 2019, we'll have 5. That's by design. We're putting the responsibility on them. Because that is where the responsibility lies. Linder Road. Okay, you can haul me in, or you can have a lectureship, or you can have a gospel meeting and bring in Preacher Joe, and he can talk to you and do some good things and say some good things. But guess what? Tomorrow I'm getting on an airplane. And Preacher Joe will get on an airplane, or get in his car, or whatever he's traveling by. And you know who's going to grow Linder Road? Y'all. Y'all are going to grow Linder, or not grow Linder Road. And if we want Cameroon to grow, they need to be pulling the wagon. And that's what we're helping them to do. Now, let me show you some ways in which we're doing that. We support 7 native village works. Now, in this picture, you have Henry. He preaches in a village called Munyengi. Now, Vincent in the middle is actually the preacher in the Miyuka Church of Christ. It's not a village church. He helps coordinate with me. And then you have Surplus. I have so many people say, Surplus, is that his real name? That's his real name. And if you look at Surplus, there ain't a lot of surplus to Surplus. He's a little guy, but he's a great guy. And he preaches in Missouri. Now, when I say preaches, Henry and Surplus, they don't live in Munyengi and Missouri. On Saturday, they go there, and they work with the church on Saturday and Sunday. They will teach, they will go visit backsliders, they will evangelize, they will preach, they will do whatever that local church needs. And then they will come back. We pay them a small amount, we pay their transportation, and for all the 7 works combined, it's roughly $300 a month. So it's not a big outlay of cash. Now you say, okay, why are you doing villages? Because let me tell you something. The village in Cameroon is no different than the small town in America. Hey, with World Bible School, I go to a lot of different churches. I go to churches in big towns, little towns. I go to big churches, little churches, in between churches, all that kind of jazz. And if you know anything about rural America is not growing. And there's several reasons why. Number one, well, let's talk about, okay, rural America, South. Churches are not, the town's not growing, but the church isn't either. Why not? Well, number one, us old people have this bad habit of dying. Right? And the young people have this bad habit of moving away. And that's true in Cameroon. If you're in Munyengi or if you're in Missouri, and you're 15 years old, you're 18 years old, you're ready to graduate. If you want a job, you're not going to get a job there. You're going to get a job in Kumba, or I can name names that wouldn't mean nothing to you, but bigger cities. So you say, well, Jim, then why are you wasting any money here? Here's why. Our primary goal in the village work is the kids. 40% of the entire population of Cameroon is under 15 years of age. There are a lot of kids. Now, are we going to reach all of them? Of course not. But here's the idea. If we can help the kids in Munyengi and Missouri and the other places grow up to love Jesus and be dedicated to Christ, when they move to Kumba or they move to Boyet, they move to the big city, guess what? The kingdom still grows. Now, the village church doesn't grow, but the kingdom grows. And so that's one of the things we're doing. A second thing, I use that word loosely, Louise Clement. Okay, Louise Clement lives in Lubbock, Texas. And for the last, I guess, 8 years, every other year, she's traveled with me. Just as Lori went this last year, Louise will be coming this coming February. Louise has trained 12 native sisters. The 6 you have here, as you can read, are the French. There's 6 English. Here's what they do. On weekends, they go out to congregations and hold seminars on how to teach kids. They do Saturday and Sunday. The expenditure is very little. We pay their transport. That's about it. The native church houses them and feeds them. But the whole goal here's the idea. Okay, you take a congregation that's fairly decent size, okay? And there are, let's say, 4 village churches around it. They will all come together on Saturday and Sunday. And these girls will train those ladies to teach the kids. And we're having really great results. I mean, I get reports from these gals. And we have churches that didn't have a youth group, that is a kid class, and now they have a great one. We have churches that over there, and this is true in Ghana too, every church, almost every church I've ever been to, 9 o'clock is Bible class, 10 o'clock is worship. Well, you have village churches over there, they have one room. That's it, that's the church hall. And so many of them now, at 8 o'clock, will have their kid class. And at 9 o'clock, they'll have the big people class, and then worship at 10 o'clock. And they're growing. And understand, my view is all long-term. I'm not short-term. I'm long-term in my thought processes. The Northern Brethren. If you look at a map of the United States, and I assume that you all know what I'm fixing to say, numerically, the strength of the church in America is in the South. Now, I've been around long enough to know the strength of the church spiritually. I've been to churches of 50 in the North that were stronger than some churches of 500 in the South. Because you're not strong based just on your attendance figures. But if you look at Cameroon, if you were to take that map that we looked at earlier and just pretty much halfway through it, just draw a line, everything above, the church is small, church is weak. We, for 4 years, have been bringing down 10 brethren from the north. We pay for it. Why do we pay for it? It costs $75 one way. They take a 4-hour bus ride, followed by a 4-hour bus ride, followed by a 14-hour train ride, followed by a 4-hour bus ride to get to us. Costs $75. They can't afford, one way, they can't afford $75. Their congregation can't afford $75. So I raise the money, and we bring them down. Richard and I, this past February, sat down with John Claude and these 10. Because they had made a proposal to me the year before, and I said, okay, send me your facts. Yeah, and they never did. And so I started pressing them in November of last year, said, look, we'd like to help you, but before I start asking people for money, I got to know what I'm talking about. And so they got all their stuff together, and what they presented to Richard and myself was a project where they would buy corn, and then they would sell the corn. And they had all the facts and figures out where they would be able to have enough profit to do 2 things. Number one, help a number of preachers in the area, a number of congregations in the area, and number 2, enough money to plow back into buying more corn for the next year. So it would not be each year that I come, we need more money. Now, we're going to find out how this works in February. And Linder Road had a big part in this. And you bought a generator for them. I don't know if you knew that, but you did. So they can do street preaching. Street preaching would probably be of no value. Well, I was going to say in Meridian probably be against the law. I don't know what your laws are here. But street preaching in the north, what they do, here's what they do. A group of the church starts singing. They just get in an open air, they start singing songs. That draws the crowd. Once the crowd is there, one of the preachers starts preaching. And while he's preaching, members are going through the audience with tracts, with sign-up sheets. Would you like to study the Bible? And it works. It works. You've been helping us buy roofs. This is one of your buildings. Okay? We built 4 buildings, the whole shooting match. And then my mission committee and myself realized that was not wise for this reason. It was our building. That's how they viewed it. And so when the building had a problem, they'd email me. Hey, your building needs X, Y, or Z. And so we finally told them, if we have the money and you have built the building, we will buy the zinc. We will not pay for any labor to put the roof on. We will not buy a nail. We will buy zinc. Finish. Because this way, they're like 90% vested financially. And so Banga Bakunda is a church between Kumba and Boya on the English side. Anyway, that's one of the ones that you all roofed. Okay. Let's look at some positives. That's supposed to be white. Can you read that? You can? Okay, well, good. Okay, number one, the church is headed in the right direction. Once again, I'm going to tell you how I think. You don't have to agree with me. When I look, whether it's Buckingham Road, whether it's a church in Cameroon, my question always is direction. Are we headed in the right direction? Now, the church will never grow fast enough for my liking. I always want more converts. I always want more people, more souls. Won't you? I mean, that's what we want. But once again, it goes direction. I told you this morning, I think I did, we have 10 grandchildren. Our youngest is 6 years old. Let's say that I die 8 years from now. She'll be 14. She won't be full grown. She better not be married. She won't have a college degree. There are a whole lot of things she won't have. She won't be married. You know, I already said that. You know, that's on my brain. But you know what? Now, right now, she's about here. Now, if 8 years from now she's here, we got problems. But you know what? If she's here or wherever, you know, if she's grown, I'll be a happy camper. And so, when I look at the 22 years that I've worked in Cameroon, is everything peachy keen? No. In fact, I'm going to show you some negatives in a minute. But I can tell you, from 1996 to this day, the church is going in the right direction. Number two, the focus on Jesus is growing. I need to slow down here for a minute. You can respond however you want to respond to this, okay? Now, I told you this morning or yesterday or whenever I was raised in the church. Okay? Now, I was raised in Kansas. I don't know anything about Idaho as far as theology and churches and all that sort of jazz, okay? But I can tell you how I was raised. We were raised on works salvation. Get baptized, go to church 3 times a week, pray every day, read your Bible every day, evangelize, help little old ladies across the street, and then maybe if you die with a prayer on your lips, you might slide in, but you're not even sure then. And we weren't a real joyous bunch. Why would you be joyous if that's your theology? Okay? Now you have to listen to what I'm fixing to say, or you're not going to hear what I'm going to say. Doctrine and Christ, to me, they're a marriage. You can go to extremes. You can say, I'm only for Jesus. And doctrine doesn't matter. That's garbage. But by the same token, if you say, I'm going to have doctrine flawlessly, but Jesus, He's peripheral, that's garbage too. But you see in Cameroon, they've been top-heavy on doctrine. Hey, I'm not knocking sound doctrine. We need to teach sound doctrine. But many of them wouldn't know Jesus if he walked up to them and said, howdy. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to help them get a focus. We want to be balanced. And we're seeing that. There is a greater focus on Christ. And then critical think is improving. Oh man, I have noticed in my 30 years of mission work, African preachers, most of them are not good thinkers. They're excellent robots. What I mean by that is if they've been to preaching school or something like that, they've heard, okay, here's the answer to doctrinal question A, and they can spit that sucker out as fast as anybody. They've never thought anything through. John Reese, who I mentioned briefly this morning, who's the director of World Bible School, or maybe it was yesterday. Anyway, John grew up in Africa. He was born in Africa. His parents were American missionaries. He was born in Rhodesia, which is Zimbabwe now. When he was 18 years of age, he came to America and went to Harding. He got his degree, went back to Zimbabwe, and then to South Africa doing mission work, much of it dealing with World Bible School. In 1992, I think that's the year, Tex Williams, who at that time was the director of World Bible School, invited John and Beth to come to this country and work with them, and he did, and John's doing just a great work. Buckingham Road, where I worship, we had John come and just, cheer us up one day or boost us up, and it was on a Sunday morning. He taught Bible class and preached that morning, and then we went to lunch. And I was talking to John, because John's a really smart guy. I mean, John is so stinking smart, it's not even funny. And I was talking to him about this, man, these preachers can't think. He said, Jim, you need to understand something. In Africa, they're not taught critical thinking. They're taught rote. Now, rote is okay for little kids. Okay? If you're teaching second graders, and you're talking about, you go in, you talk about Jonah, and a fish ate him, and he disobeyed God, and all that sort of jazz, and that's a cool little story. Okay? But you don't go into depths of theology. You don't go into a second grade class and say, okay, kids, pull out your Bibles, turn to Revelation 20, we're going to talk about the 1,000-year reign. I mean, you'd be dumber than a post if you did that. And you might as well be talking to posts to do that. I mean, it ain't going to work, right? Okay. One thing that I've done my best in the seminars, because I believe of all the things we do, the seminar is the most important, because we're training church leaders. I have told them, I don't know how many times, brothers, you need to understand something. You're not God. And I'm not God. Don't listen to me just because I say it, because I'm a man. I'm fallible. Now, I'm not saying don't listen to what I say, but you listen. And as I speak, you have your ear to my mouth and your eyes to a Bible. And you think, you critically think. One of the greatest compliments I've ever received in Cameroon, really anywhere, but in Cameroon. About 3 years ago, in Douala, this was on a Thursday night, after the seminar, after my class had closed at 6 o'clock, a young man named Cyprian. Richard knows Cyprian. Cyprian's a great kid. He will make a great elder someday if we can get him a wife and some kids. Okay? He's 35 years old. He's a great kid. I love that. He loves God. He came up to me after class and he said, Jim, thank you. Okay? What do you thank me for? He said, most of the people who've come here and taught us have just told us this is right or wrong. You're helping us learn to think. That was music to my ears. Now, does everybody think critically? No. The old heads, holy moly, man, they're as hard as the hardest thing in this building. I mean, they are in stone. I love them, okay? I love them. But the old guys, hey, they're there. And I'm really focusing on the younger guys, because they're the ones who you can work with. They're the putty. Now, I want to show some negatives though. I don't know about you. I've heard enough mission reports. I'll be sitting in the pew and I'm listening to Missionary Joe. As he talks, I'm thinking, no way. It can't be that good. Because all Missionary Joe does is tell me all the great things that are happening. And hey, there's some negatives in Cameroon. Number one, entitlement mentality is a challenge. Now, many of us in this room understand, let's take this country and our entitlement mentality that we have in the government. Hey, we have people, you know it and I know it, who believe the government owes them everything. And once you have an entitlement mentality, it's hard to break that. And what happened in Cameroon, and I'm not trying to be mean, I'm really not, but from what I can gather from a number of native brothers who I really respect and trust, is that the early missionaries, the early American missionaries in Cameroon were just free as can be with cash. I mean, you need money, how much you need? You know, here it is. And so now, after 20 years, from 67 to say 87, they developed this idea that we, the American, we owe them. And we're saying, no, we don't. Now, I'm nice when I do it. I mean, I really am. But let me give you this real simple illustration. I'll have someone come up to me and say, Jim, I can't afford a Bible. I need a Bible. It's okay. How much does the Bible cost? Now, I know the answer. The answer is $5,000. Don't worry. That's about $10. And that's okay. And they're a farmer. I'll say, if your cutlass was spoiled, their machete, won't work anymore. And cutlass costs about $5,000. What would you do? I'd get another one. Where would you get the money? They'll say, I would do. I mean, that's the term they would use. I say, okay, you may not have 5,000 francs to buy a Bible right now. But if you believe it's that valuable, then you'll get one. Now, some Americans think I'm brutal, and I'm not. And I do buy some Bibles. All I'm saying is we're trying to help change this. It won't happen overnight. Dogmatism is still alive and well. There's still a lot of that. Hey, you know what? I don't know how many of y'all were raised in the church, but when I was growing up, man, we'd fight at the drop of a hat, and we'd drop the hat. I mean, it was like we were itching for a battle. And they can be very dogmatic. And I'm right, and you're saying, come on, man. Going back to the critical thinking. Let's reason this out. Once again, that's going to be a battle. I want to spend some time here on this English side crisis. And I'm going to tell you about everything I know, so after, and I'm not joking, after worship, you'll be wasting your time if you ask me to give you any more information, because I really don't know any more than what I'm fixing to tell you. I've come to know that over the last number of years, not how many years, there's been festering underneath the surface an enmity of the English versus the French. Not the French versus the English versus the French. And many on the English side want to break away and form their own government. That's never going to happen, I don't think, because the French have all the power. They have the guns, they have the army, they have the president, they got it. So almost 2 years ago, there was a strike. It began with teachers striking. It then was followed by lawyers striking. And bottom line is this. In many places, there's been no school since October of 2016. No school. In the spring of 2017, they didn't give a rebate to the parents for their school fees. They just had to eat that money. Now, there have been some rebels. Where they came from, who's supporting them, I don't know. And they're causing all kinds of mayhem on the English side. The Cameroon army has went in, and they're duking it out. We've got a lot of brethren in the church who are living in the bush right now. Smalakambe, that picture I showed, they're not worshiping. They can't. Houses have been burned. We have a sister in Christ who 2 weeks ago became a widow because her husband was killed by a stray bullet. I don't understand all this, but I know this. We have at least 55 to 60 congregations that are being significantly, seriously impacted by this crisis. And we have brethren who don't have food. We have brethren who don't have medicine. We have brethren who don't have clothes. Now, God has blessed me. I've been able to raise over $6,000 that we've wired over there. And they've bought a bunch of clothes. Well, no. Let me back up. They bought a bunch of food and medicine. The church over there is giving clothes. They're buying clothes. They're giving clothes, donating clothes. They are doing some money. You know, it's kind of, you remember the Jerusalem brethren who were in a famine, and churches all over the world were sending money to help them, and that's what's happening here. When will this crisis end? God knows. God knows. It may end in 6 months. It may end in 6 years. I don't know. Now, it will not impact my ministry. Because what we will do in February, in October, I'm going on the French side. There's no danger on the French side. No danger. Zero. In February, John Claude and I have discussed this. We'll make a final decision in a few months. If it's still, I can't travel on the English side. It'd be too dangerous. And what we will do, at least this is one of the things we thought of, is bringing some of them to Douala. And we'll pay their transportation. We'll see what happens. Next June, now see, this past June, in fact, Lori was asking me about the June trip. How'd it go? It was great. And I was worried about the June trip because, see, usually the June trip is on the English side. But we found out in about April, it ain't going to work. Jim, you just can't come. I already had 5 people, including Jim, so we had 5 airplane tickets bought. And let me tell you something about airlines. Is Jill here? I don't want to say anything bad, but hey, you can't call them and say, hey, there's a crisis in Cameroon, I want my money back. And they say, no problem. Oh yeah, there's a big problem. So I had 5 people. Now, I know from experience, I can't keep 5 people busy on the French side. There aren't enough churches, there aren't enough prospects. And so I emailed John Claude, I talked to him on the phone, and I said, look, you're going to have to figure out some things. Some other ways we can work. We don't want to waste the Lord's money. We don't want to go over there and just park and stare at one another. And it went well. Number 1, I was able to do a lot of training to church leaders. Number 2, 2 of our sisters who were with me were able to do some sister training. Now, one of the sisters got sick one day. And I had to teach the ladies. I didn't want to teach the ladies. I like ladies, okay? They said I did a good job. I think they're being nice. But anyway, we got the job done. We had a brother who taught the youth. Now, youth in Cameroon is not youth in America. The youth group in Cameroon is going to be usually from 16 to 40. If you're 35 years old and you're not married, you're in the youth group. I mean, that's just reality. And so he was able to do training to them. Another brother was able to sit down with brethren and do questions. And we did evangelism too. And we still baptized as many people as we normally would. But overall, it really may have been the best June trip I've ever been on. So the crisis is not going to impact my ministry. Well, it'll impact the English side. But what I would ask you to do is pray for them. I mean, seriously. Put this crisis on your prayer list. I don't know how it's going to work out, but there you go. Okay, let's talk about the future of this ministry. Number 1, I can't read that black from way back there. Continued training. I've had people ask me, and this is a legitimate question, Jim, how long are you going to do this? My answer is until my health takes me down or I croak. I mean, that's it. I love what I do. I love what I do. I have tremendous energy. I'm as energetic today as I was 30 years ago. It blows my brains when my 41-year-old daughter says she's tired. I said, what? How can you be tired? But anyway, she is, or she says she is. I've had people think, well, Jim, aren't you going to get someone to follow you? I'm going to deal with that in just a minute. We're going to continue the training. Number 2, evangelistic outreach. We're going to keep campaigns where we're teaching people the gospel. We're baptizing people into Christ. In the 22 years I've been going over there, we've had roughly 1,800 baptisms. We've taught a lot of people the gospel. And we've done a lot of interacting with churches and really helped them. We've established a number of churches. Children's development. Once again, going back to the 40% of all Cameroonians are 15 or under. Man, we want to reach these kids. We've written 4 groups or four levels of Bible. Where am I looking? Curriculum. But it's all for little kids. We're working right now on teenagers, on a curriculum for teens. And we want to reach these kids. What's it say? Prayerful support. I told you this, I told you this yesterday, for those of you who were in my class yesterday. I believe in prayer. And I would ask everyone in this room, put Cameroon on your prayer list if it's not already there. Not only for the crisis, but just for the work overall. And number 5, extinction. That's what I want to happen to this ministry. I've had brethren ask me, Jim, who are you going to get to replace you? I thought about that for a number of years. And you may agree with this or disagree, no problem. But I finally came up with this. I'm going to get the Cameroonian church to replace me. And here's my thought process. Yeah, maybe I could get a 35-year-old who I could groom and take over there. But in my mind, I think that would retard the growth of the church. Because then they would become dependent on him. I am convinced that if I croak today, if I have a heart attack right now and never see Cameroon again, we've done enough in these 22 years, the church will do well. Now, someone may say, well, then why do you keep going? I think we can still do good. I hope that's true. I think God is working through me and working through people like Richard and Lori and so many others that go with me. But the ultimate goal of this ministry is to go out of existence. If you want to know more about the work, you can go to www.cameroonforchrist.org. That's our website. If you have any loose money, on the home page it says donate. You can go through PayPal or write a check to Buckingham Road Church of Christ. I had a friend of mine who I played golf with 3 years ago. He said, Jim, could you use $2,000 to work in Cameroon? After I quit laughing, I said, Jared, you ain't got enough money that I can't handle. So if anybody in this room has $1 million that you just don't know what to do with, I know what to do with it, okay? Or any other amount. You don't have to give. That's just up there. But if you want to know more about the work, you can go to the website. Okay, that's the end of that. We're going to have an invitation, but I want to look at this passage that's up on the screen. In Psalm 103, 10 through 12, He does not treat us as our sins deserve or repay us according to our iniquities. That's good news, ain't it? I mean, that is really good news. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is His love for those who fear Him. Now, I'm going to focus on the last one. As far as the east is from the west, so far as He removed our transgressions from us. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think He didn't say as far as the north is from the south? I think I know the answer. Think. If you're traveling due north, I don't know where north is. I don't know where I'm at, okay? It's this way? Okay, but if you're traveling due north and you never turn around, if you travel long enough, you'll be going south. Am I telling the truth? You better believe it. And if this was the North Pole, we could say, I'm 3 feet from south. You see, you can measure north from south. If you're traveling due east and you never turn around, will you ever be going west? You never will. To me, this is one of the most gorgeous pictures of the forgiveness of God. David is saying, guess what? Dream all you want to dream. Think all you want to think. Imagine all you want to imagine about how great the forgiveness of God is, but you can't measure it. It's that great. Isn't that great? that we have a God that loves us. We talked about the cross this morning. We can, you and I can talk and talk and talk forever about the love of God. And we're never going to scratch the surface. We're never going to remotely comprehend how great His love for us is. But this evening, as we get ready to sing, as with every service, if you are ready to give your life to Christ, if you're not a baptized believer, we are ready and waiting, the water's ready, and God is ready to add you to His family as you're baptized into Christ. But for those of us who are not Christians, for those of us who are Christians, once again, this is no different than what I said this morning. This is a time when we want to pray for you if that's what you need. This is a time of family time. And so if you need to respond to the invitation for any reason, we invite you to come now as we stand and sing.